Okay, my name's Adam. So I've talked a bit about how important routine is to my autistic son. Our day starts at 5 o'clock in the morning. My son will get up. He will put his clothes on, as I've spoken about as part of the routine. He will have breakfast at a set time because of the routine. He will go to day centre because of the routine. So, and everything's running along smoothly. Everything's going nicely because of the routine. And then along came coronavirus and changed that massively. It changed it changed the programs on the TV. It changed the news flashes, the daily briefings. Although the daily briefings, all those things changed. Those tiny, tiny little things. And then it changed day centres. It changed the activities you can do at day centres. It changed the amount of people at day centres, the staff at day centres. It changed the time you could go, the time you could come back. It changed absolutely everything. It changed the way you could shop, the way you could go out the house, it changed everything. It changed everything for all of us, for people that could understand how difficult this was. It was really, really hard and such a worrying, distressing time. And then when you add to that someone that's autistic and has learning disabilities, can you just imagine how difficult it must be with all these changes flashing up at you all the time on your radio, on your TV, the people that you see are different, the places that you go are different. It was beyond difficult for my son in those early days. It was all these different things flashing up at him all the time. And there was nothing there that was the same. So my job was to try to make those things, to try and get some normality out of it. So how did I do that? I guess what I did was, so on a day that he would go to day centre and he went for a walk, I'd use that day to go for our walk. On a day that he'd have a packet of crisps with a member of staff, I'd use that day to sit and have a packet of crisps with him. On the day that he took a lunch, we'd have a lunch at home. On a day that we packed lunch, this is really important. Just saying a lunch at home is not enough. It would be the same packed lunch that he would take to his day centre. It would be in the same box. It would be at the same time. And we would then build up that routine at the dinner table at home. And that's how important routine is to my son. And if we'd planned to go to Pizza Hut, well, we'd make pizzas at home. We'd set out a little salad bar. We'd cut the pizzas out. I'd hold my son's hand, get a plate, just as you would do in the pizza place, and walk round and choose a bit of pizza. And it was those things that we would do. And it was talking about, and then we would talk about things that were happening in the future that we could use as anchor points. So we were due to go on holiday in the October. This all started in the March. We'd talk about the October holiday. And even though it was a long, long way away, we'd have to use what was there that we knew was happening as anchor points. So the impact of those things on my son, of all those changes, the changes that were put into place because of coronavirus and all the things that he couldn't do because of coronavirus, they had a massive impact on him. So instead of getting up at 5 o'clock, he might get up at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. Instead of going to bed at 10 o'clock, he might not go to bed. He might get up at 11 o'clock. He would start the day asking you questions about lockdown. When does lockdown finish? When does lockdown finish? When does lockdown finish? That could happen hundreds of thousands of times a day, to the point that he would be so distressed that he might bite himself. He would need constant reassurance and looking after. He needs someone sat with him, me sat with him, holding his hand. We talked about the holiday in October. So he had a birthday card sent to him by the holiday park the year before. So he would sit and hold the birthday card, and we'd sit and talk about the birthday card. We'd sit and talk about the upcoming holiday. So we'd use the past of what has happened and what's going to happen in the October, and we'd use that to very, very slowly over a 4-month period, get my son back to the point that when he did go to day centre, he understood about lockdown. He understood that we were keeping him safe from the coronavirus. He understood as much as he could understand. And he did that we spent around 4 months doing that. And then another big thing happened. When we did join day centres, they changed. The days changed, the service changed, the staff changed. So then we spent another couple of months going through all those changes. And it goes on, all these different things that may feel really, really difficult for us. You've got to times by 100, by 1,000,000 for someone with all these different sensory issues and learning disability and autism. It is beyond difficult. As much as we've helped try and understand that that these changes have taken place, and as much as it seems like he might be comfortable with them at times, he really isn't, because he understands that there's still so much talk all the time about the coronavirus on the news, on the radio. It's flashed up all the time on the telly. It's a constant reminder all the time to him that those changes are still there, and that even though we've adapted to a point with these new changes, he knows that they're only temporarily, and he longs for a return to his new routines. And we'll talk about and ask about when everything's going back to normal. When will coronavirus stop? He's asking questions that you have no answer to. Well, you've got to be able to give him an answer. So how do you answer someone that's asking you something that you can't answer? You go back to routine. You go back to the things that will help stabilize him to a point that he can understand, that he's comfortable with. Because if you didn't do that, if you didn't make him feel comfortable, if you didn't help him understand what was going on or cope with all the changes, the outcome to that would be that you'd have a young man that would be very different to the person that you could hold hands with and help him safely across the road. You'd have a very, very different young man. Just being able to walk him across the road, he would bite himself, he would be very upset, he might cry, he would try and pull away from you in the supermarket. And 6 months ago, 8 months ago, that would not have happened. So those routines are so important for my son to understand, because they affect his behaviour, and that's what you don't want. When someone sees someone with an autistic person or someone with learning disabilities, they see, they react, and they criticise that person within that moment about what they see. But what they don't see is all the hundreds and hundreds of hours. They don't see the early mornings. They don't see the anxiety. They don't see the stress, both for the carer, the parent, and for the disabled person, the autistic person. They don't see that, and they judge that person on a moment. They judge that person maybe because they're not wearing a face mask. They do not understand why that person might not be able to wear a face mask, how it feels to an autistic person to wear a face mask, how difficult a parent works behind the scenes. That is not seen, and that needs to change. There needs to be more awareness and more understanding in supermarkets. 12 months ago, we did something called an autism hour in a supermarket. I'm not saying I fully agreed with it, because autism's not something you can switch on and off where appropriate for a supermarket's autism hour. It isn't. So I personally, as much as I appreciate they make people more understanding of autism, and they give autistic shoppers a opportunity to go in and shop when the lights are dimmed and the music's low, those are all good things. But hey, we should be doing that anyway. There are shops within the UK that don't have that blaring music, that don't have those lights. So there's no reason why we shouldn't be doing that anyway. Coronavirus showed us that we can change. coronavirus showed us that supermarkets can change. So why aren't they changing for autistic people? Why did we used to have autism hours within a supermarket? Now, yeah, they're so scarce now. They're so rare now. At the very time people need them, they're so rare. And I, for one, don't understand it. I, for one, don't understand why an autistic person can't, along with their carer, can't go up to a help desk within a supermarket or shopping centre, produce a letter from the doctor or a letter from DWP or something like that. Why can't they produce one of those and be given a lanyard or something that would allow them to have access to times for the elderly and vulnerable? Because very often what people see is they see an able-bodied person. They don't see someone that is disabled. What we need to do is to be able what we need is for autistic people to be able to shop in these supermarkets and not be judged for not wearing a face mask, not be challenged for not wearing a face mask, and same as transport. And I believe the answer is very simple. 12 months ago, I could go to a theme park. I could take my documentation saying that my son's disabled to guest services, and I could get a lanyard, right, and go to an exit pass on a ride. And that would give me entry to that ride, and you wouldn't be challenged. Why don't we do that in supermarkets? Why don't we adapt that system during the coronavirus in supermarkets? Why aren't we doing it anyway? It's supermarkets and everyone else is thinking of all these different things about how to adapt. They are not thinking of disabled and autistic people, and that needs to change.